You know, guys, I gotta admit, I thought this past weekend would be a pretty relatively quiet weekend for Smash. I couldn't really recall any big tournaments that were taking place, anything that was gonna kind of captivate me and catch my eye until I realized that this tournament happening in Florida. It was like a Florida one-day regional type event. It was pretty stacked as well, as you can see, honestly, by the seating over here. So let's go ahead and take a quick look before we really jump into the crux of it this video is about. So you got Salt One, aka Cola, you got Zomba, Anathema, Goblin, and then right here, seated 5th, Samsora. Now, this kind of probably caught a couple people off guard, maybe me not so much, and that's because of a couple of reasons, right? So I know last year, Samsora did actually compete in a couple of tournaments, I believe in New York, right? I think he has some wins over Jen and Tilde. So won a couple New York locals, I believe, in that fashion. And then I think like a month ago when this tournament was actually being like promoted, Cirque du CFL, I'm sure I butchered that name. I recall seeing like a promotional poster that had Samsora on it. Now, this is Florida after all, right? So I'm not really surprised by any of the kind of crazy over-the-top kooky shit that happens down there. So I actually thought it might have been just a bit of a troll, but it turns out it was in fact a reality. So I guess a lot of people kind of caught on to that too, because you can kind of just click on the quote tweets and not everybody's talking about it, but there's a fair amount of people here. You got Evelyn saying Samsora should still be banned. And it'd be so funny if he wildly underperforms the seed. Spoiler alert, Samsora actually would go on to get 7th place at this event. And finally, the Samsora unbanned, probably the most unjust ban in Smash history. All right, so you got that right there. Forget Samsora, I'm more interested in balls grab the Wario. Well, I don't want Wario anywhere near my balls personally, but that's just me. And it kind of goes on and on with people who do decide to actually comment on it or kind of like back and forth on, you know, where their stance actually is. You know, the Smash community just forgot Samsora broke a federal crime or what. And that has to do with, I believe, the letter of the law from Louisiana, where I think Sam is originally from, where in his situation, like, yes, he did commit, you know, actual crime, as it is kind of detailed. Now, me personally, do I think Samsora is like a danger to the actual community? I do not. I think Samsora is, quite frankly, somebody like a lot of Smashers who lacks common sense. And I want to phrase that, or at least put that in perspective, where I'm not excusing anything. I'm just saying I just think Samsora is more of a lack of common sense and understanding than actually like he is some sort of actual horrible human being. That's just my 2 cents on it. And you know, when I did see that Samsora was going to be competing in this tournament, I naturally had to lock in, since he's not locked up, and just kidding, and see exactly what all, you know, the fuss was about. So here you go, switch over right here. You see Samsora completely shaved, you know, bald head. I think they're calling him Samsora in the chat, if I'm not mistaken, just given the amount of baldness being presented to you here. Now, you can almost kind of look at it like maybe this is like supposed to be like a symbolism for like a rebirth. You know what I'm saying? You kind of shave off the head, and now you're kind of like, you allow common sense to flow into that big ass noggin of yours. But who the hell really knows, right? I certainly don't. But let me just say this, okay? I want to make a couple of points here, okay? As we'll kind of skip ahead, because Samsora actually went on the 3-0 Anathema before losing to Zomba. This was all in loser side of things. I think Samsora lost 3-0 to Myron in winners, if I'm not mistaken. So didn't, you know, underperform the seed like by a large margin, only like 1 spot right there. Obviously seeded 5th, ends up in 7th. Not a bad day considering all the heavy hitters that were actually at this event. Twitch chat moderation. Listen, anybody who knows me knows I'm in the trenches of Twitch chat, okay? I'm a goon with the rest of you. But some of the comments were a little outlandish. And I'm not even talking about in like somebody who was like maybe insulting Samsora. I'm just talking about like some references that were made that just seemed a little bit too OD. So I would definitely say, like, if you're gonna have like a player who's, you know, quote unquote banned at your event, you might want to be a little bit more heavy-handed with the moderation in the chat. Just my 2 cents. Overall though, I'd say a lot of people thought it was a pretty good experience. I actually saw a lot of people who I recognized in that chat, because I'm sure they were just as curious as I was to see how Samsora was actually going to do at this event. Some people might not want to admit that curiosity, but I mean, you know, this is somebody who's a former undisputed top 5 player before quarantine, you know what I'm saying? And probably nowadays it'll be way harder to gauge, like if Samsora could actually still be a national threat, because I don't imagine this attendance will be the norm. Personally, I think if the ban was more fleshed out, like let's say if it was more fleshed out from the jump, then I think 2 years is absolutely a fair amount of time for somebody to be removed or excommunicated from a community, right? But this was more of an indefinite thing. However, I know the Smash, like the ban committee or whatever, is like kind of like defunct. It's not a thing anymore, so I don't know if that creates like a gray area. But it's again, it's kind of hard to gauge because it's Florida, man. Like if you know any stories about Florida, just Florida in general, you know these guys just do what they want, and you know I think they have actually a pretty dope ass community down there. So I think it was pretty ballsy of them to actually invite Sam, and I think for Sam it was just like, okay, well I'll go where I'm wanted, you know what I'm saying, and not where it would be an issue. I think that's kind of what you got to do. If you're a TO who's thinking like, honestly, I'm a little curious to see how Samsora would do at my tournament in my region, and maybe I'll send him an invite. I think you have to poll your community, right? Like you have to poll like your staff, your local community, see how they feel about that. And I think that should go you know, in regards to any player who's, you know, I guess like kind of like in that realm of Samsora territory. You know, like I said, a lot of people in the community are kind of split on whether or not Samsora should be allowed to play or not. Me personally, as I said, I don't think Samsora is a danger to anybody. I just think a lot of common sense needs to be assessed here. But obviously, if you did watch Samsora compete, I would say the fundamentals, they look like they're still there, right? I don't think there's really any lack of fundamentals. Punish game, not on the level of a Mute Ace or a Numeki, and you know, in a tournament setting, that's kind of hard to refine if you're not able to compete all the time. So I don't actually know what this means, to be honest with you, but it is an interesting piece of information that I thought was certainly worth bringing up to you guys and kind of giving your feedback, or getting your feedback and your thoughts on it too. Like I'll even kind of skip ahead here so you can see like Samsora does legitimately go on to 3-0 Anathema. It's actually pretty crazy when you think about it, just given, you know, Anathema considered potentially the best Rob. I personally think it's Big Boss, but you know, beat Anathema clean, go a game 5 last hit with Zomba after this, even in a losing effort. Clearly some juice is still there, but I don't know how much is going to be allowed to be squeezed or fleshed out in that regard. But I've talked enough about it. Please, in the comments below, let me know your thoughts, man. Are you guys excited to see, you know, the potential return of Samsora to some capacity, or do you think he should just kind of, you know, remain, you know, excommunicated? I think a lot of people would agree, considering that, you know, what happened is right there listed as an actual crime. It's kind of a little bit of a softball that you actually kind of just get removed from a community in gaming, and that's about it. So I don't know, there's a couple different ways you can go on it, but I'm curious what you have to say. Let me know, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.